There is no stock, no real estate deal, no crypto play, nothing on this planet that offers a guaranteed 100% return. If she is not contributing enough to capture her full employer match, she is handing back part of her salary that she already earned. Here is the clean framework. If a debt carries an interest rate above 6 to 8%, pay it off before investing further. If it is below 5%, invest instead. The gray zone in between depends on your risk tolerance. Why this range? Because the long-term average return of the stock market is historically 7 to 10% annually. Paying off a credit card at 22% interest is a guaranteed 22% return. Nothing reliably beats that. But a student loan at 4%, the math says you are likely better off investing because expected returns will probably exceed what that debt is costing you. The Roth IRA first. Contribution limit is around $7,000 per year. Money goes in after taxes, grows completely tax-free, comes out in retirement completely tax-free, not tax-deferred, free. You pay taxes once and the government never touches it again. Not on the growth, not on the withdrawals. If Aisha maxes this from age 29 at 8% returns, she retires with roughly $1.1 million. The IRS has zero claim on. The HSA, the Health Savings Account, is the most underrated tool in the entire tax code. It is the only account in existence with a triple tax advantage. Contributions are tax deductible, growth is tax-free, withdrawals for medical expenses are tax-free. After 65, it works like a traditional IRA for anything. The optimal play is to pay medical bills from your checking account now, keep every receipt, let the HSA compound in index funds for 30 years, then reimburse yourself decades later. There is no time limit on reimbursement. You are essentially running a secret retirement account. The IRS is completely fine with. Then max your 401k beyond the match. The employee contribution limit is over $23,000. Combined with employer contributions, the total can approach $70,000 per year in tax-advantaged growth. Total US Stock Market Index Fund, Total International Stock Market Fund, a bond fund, 3 funds, roughly 22,000 individual securities across dozens of countries. Total annual cost, about 0.04%, that is $40 a year on $100,000. The average actively managed fund charges 10 times that for the privilege of underperforming the market 90% of the time over 15 years. That is not my opinion, that is the SPIVA data. Stop trying to be clever. Own the entire market. Let it do what it has done for over a century. Here is what I want you to take away from this. 4 years ago, Aisha was the person grinding to get to $100,000. Every dollar felt manual. Every saving felt like a small sacrifice. And the money was mostly just tracking her effort. One hard-earned dollar at a time. That era is over. At $100,000, properly deployed her money now generates $8,000 a year on its own. By $500,000, it produces $40,000 a year in passive growth. More than 2/3 of what she currently earns at her job. By $1 million, it matches her entire salary every year, without her doing anything but leaving it alone. The people who build real wealth after $100,000 are not the ones who find smarter investments. They are the ones who stay relentlessly boring, automating contributions, ignoring market noise, routing half of every raise directly into investments before it becomes spending. They never confuse a starting line for a finish line. And here is what Munger actually meant when he said, you can ease off the gas after $100,000. He did not mean stop. He did not mean celebrate. He meant the grinding phase is behind you and ahead of you is something different, something quieter. The part where your money stops being a number you stare at and starts being a force that works while you sleep. Aisha has been waiting 4 years for that. The 11:47 p.m. moment in her bed was not the end of something. It was the beginning of something she doesn't fully understand yet. But now she does. Now you do too. If you found this useful, hit subscribe because in the next video, we are covering exactly what happens when your money hits $250,000 and the 3 moves at that level that most people completely miss. I will see you there. So she makes the safest move she can think of. She puts it in a regular savings account at her bank, the one she has had since college. And every month she checks the balance and feels calm watching it sit there untouched. Here is what Aisha does not realize. She is not protecting her money. She is losing it. Very slowly, very quietly. The average savings account pays somewhere around 0.4% interest. Meanwhile, inflation historically runs around 3%. That means every single year Aisha leaves $100,000 in that account, she loses roughly $2,600 in real purchasing power. Not on paper. The number on the screen stays the same. But what that number can actually buy is shrinking. Psychologists call this the boiled frog effect. You know the experiment. If you put a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cool water and raise the temperature 1 degree at a time, it never notices until it is too late. Over 10 years of this, Aisha will have lost tens of thousands of dollars in purchasing power while believing she made the safe choice. Meanwhile, that same $100,000 in a basic S&P 500 index fund at historical returns would have grown to approximately $216,000. She does not get that $216,000. She gets her original $100,000 back, worth considerably less than when she started. The account looked safe. The account was a slow leak in a tire that never fully goes flat. Aisha starts watching more finance content. She is smarter now. She has real money, so she starts researching individual stocks. She downloads a brokerage app. She spends her evenings reading Reddit threads and watching earnings call breakdowns. She feels productive. She feels like she is taking her wealth seriously. Here is the data on this, and it is absolutely brutal. A firm called Dalbar has been tracking how everyday investors actually perform versus the market for over 30 years. The numbers are devastating. In 2024, the average stock investor earned about 16.5%, while the S&P 500 returned roughly 25%. That is an 8.5 percentage point gap in a single year. Not because people picked scam companies, because they bought high when things felt exciting. They sold low when things felt scary. They chased what was trending. They timed exits and entries based on emotion disguised as logic. Over 30 years, that behavioral gap on a $100,000 starting investment costs you over $860,000. Not because the market failed you, because you got in your own way. And if you think professional fund managers do better, they do not. The SPIVA scorecard shows that over a 15-year period, more than 90% of actively managed funds fail to beat a simple index fund. These are people with research teams and billion-dollar budgets and degrees from universities most of us could not get into. 9 out of 10 of them cannot beat a fund that just quietly owns everything. The answer is not to try harder than they did. The answer is to stop competing with the market entirely and simply own it. This is the one Aisha is most at risk of making right now. She has been disciplined for 4 years. She has said no to things her friends said yes to. She has carried Tupperware to every lunch. And now she has $100,000. Some part of her brain, a very reasonable, very human part, decides she has earned a little breathing room. So she upgrades the apartment. Nothing dramatic, just slightly nicer. Starts ordering food a little more often. Stops checking her budget every Sunday because hey, she hit $100,000. She must be doing something right. Economists have a name for this. It is called the Diderot effect. Denis Diderot was an 18th century French philosopher who wrote an essay about how a single upgrade to his wardrobe made him dissatisfied with everything else he owned. One nice robe led to a nicer desk. The nicer desk led to a nicer chair. Each upgrade created a desire for the next one until his spending completely outpaced his income. The Diderot effect applied to personal finance works exactly the same way. One upgrade creates a new baseline. The new baseline feels normal within weeks, and normal now requires more money to maintain. The $100,000 stops growing. The momentum breaks. 5 years later, Aisha is 34, with $118,000 having generated almost no meaningful growth on an account that should have been compounding aggressively. She did not blow the money on anything dramatic. She just slowly stopped treating $100,000 as a starting line and started treating it as a finish line. That is all it takes. Now. Here is where we build the exact system that turns $100,000 into a genuine wealth building machine. The order here is not random. Get it wrong and you leave tens of thousands on the table. Get it right and the entire system compounds in your favor for decades. Before Aisha invests a single dollar, she needs 3 to 6 months of living expenses somewhere liquid and accessible. If her monthly expenses are around $3,500, that means $10,500 to $21,000 set aside in a high-yield savings account earning 4% or more, not her regular bank savings account, a high-yield account. The difference in interest alone can be 10 to 12 times higher just for choosing a different parking spot for the same money. This is not investment money. This is sleep well at night money. The money that means when her car breaks down or she loses a job, she does not have to sell investments at the worst possible time. Step 2. Capture every dollar of free money. If Aisha's employer offers a 401k match, this is the single highest guaranteed return available in the known financial universe. A 50% match is a guaranteed 50% return before the money has ever touched an investment. A 100% match is literally doubling your money on day one. Aisha is 29 years old. She makes $58,000 a year as a junior accountant. For 4 years, she has been doing everything the internet told her to do. Automated savings, cooked at home on Sundays for the whole week, took the bus longer than anyone in her friend group, said no to 3 vacations she genuinely wanted to go on. And last Thursday at 11:47 p.m., she was lying in bed unable to sleep, doom scrolling, and she opened her banking app out of habit and saw something she had never seen before. A number that started with a 1 and had 5 zeros after it. $100,113. She did not scream. She did not text anyone. She put the phone face down on the mattress, stared at the ceiling, and felt something she absolutely did not expect. Fear. Not excitement, not relief. Fear, because for 4 years, she had one very clear objective: get to $100,000. And now that she is here, she has realized something nobody warned her about. Nobody told her what to do after dot. Her older brother says, buy a house. Her co-worker says, put everything in Bitcoin before it runs again. A TikTok she saved 6 months ago says, start a dropshipping business. Her mom says, put it in a fixed deposit and don't touch it. And somewhere deep in her brain, a voice she has been fighting for 4 years is now whispering something very reasonable. You have been so careful for so long. You deserve to enjoy this. Just a little. You can always save more later. I need you to hear me clearly on this. That last voice is the one that destroys more $100,000 balances than every market crash combined. Not because it asks for something crazy, but because it asks for something human. And I am going to explain exactly why that voice is wrong, what happens when people listen to it, and precisely what Aisha should do instead. Because the choices made in the first 90 days after hitting $100,000 do not just affect the next year. They determine whether that money becomes $2 million over the next 3 decades or quietly melts back down to a number that no longer starts with a 1. My name is Rehan and we are going to do this properly. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, once said something at a shareholder meeting that personal finance creators have been repeating ever since. He said the first $100,000 is the hardest part. After that, you can ease off the gas a little. Now, almost every person who shares that quote focuses on the grinding, the sacrifice, the suffering to get there. But that is not the important part. The important part is what he said after. You can ease off the gas. Why? What changes at $100,000 that does not exist at $70,000 or $50,000 or $30,000? Here is what changes. Your money gets a job. At $100,000 invested at a historical average return of 8%, your portfolio generates $8,000 a year passively. That is $667 every single month appearing in your account without you clocking in, without you bringing leftovers to work, without you negotiating with your manager for a raise. That money shows up whether you are sick, whether you are sleeping, whether you are on vacation you finally said yes to. It does not call in on Mondays. It does not have opinions about crypto. It does not ask you to split the check at dinner. And here is where the math stops being interesting and starts being genuinely wild. Let us say Aisha continues saving $800 a month on top of her $100,000. At 8% returns, here is what happens. Her first $100,000 took her roughly 5.8 years of grinding to build. That is 70 months of discipline. Her second $100,000. That takes 3.9 years. Almost 2 full years faster. Same savings rate, same returns. Nothing changed except the compounding engine finally has enough fuel to run on its own. Her third $100,000 arrives in 2.9 years. By the time she is building her fifth $100,000, it shows up in roughly 1.8 years. Each milestone arrives faster than the last, not because she got smarter, not because she found a better investment, because the machine she built is now doing the work that she used to do manually. Think of it like a plane on a runway. The takeoff requires enormous thrust, maximum fuel. Every ounce of effort goes into getting off the ground. But once you are at cruising altitude, the engines do not need to work nearly as hard. The physics of flight does most of the work now. You just need to not crash the plane. And that is exactly where most people crash. I want you to understand something before we go further. None of these mistakes look like mistakes while you're making them. They all feel responsible. They all feel smart. They all look like something a financially mature person would do. That is what makes them dangerous. Aisha has $100,000. She has heard the horror stories, market crashes, people losing everything. Her uncle lost money in some investment 10 years ago and still brings it up at every family dinner.